Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Unlocking Economic, Social and Environmental Opportunities, part of our Next Generation Web Mapping webinar series. Before we begin, the session will be around 45 minutes and we'll be sending out the recording afterwards. Time permitting, we will be having a Q&A session towards the end. There's a question panel under the question mark button where you can type and submit your questions at any point throughout the webinar today. And at the end, we'd be grateful if you could complete our exit survey that will pop up. This will help us with our future webinars. Finally, just to let you know, you are in listen-only mode, so we can't hear you. To introduce ourselves today, my name is Damal Zapota. I work in the business development team here at CAD Corp, and I mainly work with our central and local government customers, helping them make the most from their GIS investment. My co-presenter is Simon. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Demelza. Good morning, everybody. My name's Simon Parker. I'm the pre-sales team leader at CAD Corp, and this morning I'll be demonstrating some use case examples of how web mapping can be used to help with economic development, share and map your community amenities, and I'll also focus on some forward planning processes as well.
Thank you very much, Simon. We are just going to turn our cameras off. Hopefully that will improve performance and you can make your screens full size as well. We'll turn them back on towards the end once we're picking up on your questions. Okay, the agenda for today. We've got a range of delegates on the line, and for those of you who are new to CAD Corp, I'll introduce us and what we do. But today the focus will be using web mapping and how it can help in planning departments to deliver economic development, social equality and environmental sustainability. But specifically, how web mapping can help with these 5 things on screen: planning and recovery, planning for recovery and transformation, access to amenities, call for site submissions, local plans, and assessing suitability of planning applications. The live demo from Simon will look at each of these headings in practice as well, and then I'll round up at the end and take any questions. But before we get kicked off, I'll start with a little poll to get you involved. If I launch this first poll. Does your planning department use web mapping? Yes, no, or unsure? If you could complete that for me if you're able to. Just give you a few seconds on that one. Okay, for those of you who've completed it, we're 68% who do use web mapping. So that's really great. Hopefully what you'll see in Simon's demonstration in a second is some more inspiration for different uses of web mapping in your planning departments. Second poll, just launch this one. If your previous answer was yes, does it publish local plan policies using web mapping? Again, just give you a few seconds. Great, so we're at 50% yes. So again, great to hear some departments are using sort of the digital local plans, and there's a great push for that side of things. And again, we'll hopefully provide you with some more inspiration today on the different ways you can utilize web mapping. Okay, so I said I'd talk a little bit about us here at CAD Corp. We're UK based and focus on the development and delivery of our product CAD Corp Assist, which includes web, mobile and desktop GIS applications. We also provide complementary spatial data as well as consultancy services, and we work across those sectors in green on the slide there. As a bit of a brief history, in terms of UK planning and GIS. GIS in local government generally began in planning department in the 1990s, and GIS teams sat within planning departments. And it was about this time, 1995, that CADCOP formed as a GIS software developer. Even in 1992, the Royal Town Planning Institute recognised the many benefits of GIS, and these are still applicable today. So, just reading from the screenshot that I put on there, benefits include improved access to maps and currency, better communications, and improved services. They're completely applicable and things that I talk about today with benefits of GIS. Um, Fast forward 30 years to where we are today. There's similar GIS and planning requirements across the UK and devolved governments, but data is much more widely available. Um, Geospatial is more of a general term we like to use instead of GIS. Geospatial technologies have evolved with other technological advances. So we've got new engaging user interfaces, so we don't need training. And the Google effect means that web mapping really is ubiquitous. So we also have benefits with improved hardware and cloud-based computing, and also um, more use of APIs and system integration. So lots of real-time data available to us, and the user is none the wiser. GIS teams now have generally moved to IT or performance management, and that means there's more of a holistic approach to both data and technology. So we generally have a central corporate database to keep all that GIS data together, and also from IT, sort of the push of IT, channel shift and digital transformation agendas have really the shaped user requirements. So we're going to talk about CAGOPSys web map today, and this is next generation web mapping. And web map itself was born from channel shift and improved much with digital transformation. It's a really clean interface, easy to use. We have a responsive, easy to use on a mobile device as well. It can be deployed in the cloud and integrated with other systems and databases, so you as a user get a nice, slick experience. Coming back to the 5 areas we're going to discuss today of how web mapping can help in planning. I'll start with planning for recovery and transformation. Here in this screenshot, we've got the standard web app interface where you can, for example, inspect the layers that you're interested manually. This could be any information, whether it's from the Ordnance Survey, Environment Agency, or other third party, and it can be analysed data like clusters, hotspots, but having an understanding of what's at a particular location can help with economic development. For example, knowing where flood zones are will influence planning decisions. Today, as well as web mapping sort of standard functionality, we really want to show you the more advanced technology as well. So this starts with Power BI. So many of you may have come across Microsoft Power BI today. In the screenshot, we've got a dashboard approach with integrated mapping. And this example looks at statistics by ward, which might be useful for project work in terms of understanding human factors. People in their profiles can help with economic development. For example, you might want to target underrepresented or vulnerable groups in some way. And this screenshot really is one example. It's completely configurable against your organization's data and particular requirements. And as well as the web mapping software, CAGOP can provide the services to host and manage data sets as well for you, whether they're sort of people or place related. And in terms of data, a planning database can be quite significant in size. We've mentioned a few data sets already. Simon will pick up and add some more a little bit later on. And a database needs to be managed and data kept current. And CAGOP can provide managed services for data sets. And this might include lots of different information from the Environment Agency, might be the Ordnance Survey, the new National Geographic database, for example. Office for National Statistics, historic information, um, and any others that you guys can think of as well. CAGCOP provides services to host data like this so that we remove sort of the overhead of you guys having to manage that yourself. There's lots more data out there, and please approach us if I've put a fewer data sets on screen there, by no means all on there. And if you've got your own ideas for other data sets, do let us know. So coming on to the second area, access to amenities, and in particular, a tool called Local Knowledge. Here again in the screenshot, we've got a standard web map interface, but here we are using single click queries too. So we're answering questions quickly about, in this example, where's my nearest amenity? Do people have access to vital bus services? So we can find out things like, where are my nearest 3 bus stops in this screenshot? Again, questions are configurable and based on the data you have available and your requirements. So we've got other things like so many listed buildings within 100 meters, and you can say, answer questions like, am I in a conservation area? Yes, no, without actually having to physically turn on the data layers like perhaps I was talking about in my previous example. So that's the second example we'll be looking at today. The third example is call for sites. Call for sites is a council planning process where landowners and property developers are asked to propose land sites which may be useful for potential future development to support housing or employment in the area. And what happens is a polygon or area needs to be drawn and submitted to the council with other information, and that replaces a traditional paper form. Plus, there is an opportunity for automated analysis and prioritization of your sort of planning officer caseload. And ultimately, this tool is being built to save time and money. So that's call for sites. We're actually in a lucky position where a CAGCOP customer, East Hertfordshire, has been awarded PropTech funding to develop a call for sites app with us, and that's in development. So Simon's going to show you a proof of concept of that demo today. That's a really interesting new use of web mapping for the call for sites process. The fourth example, local policies maps. So after your call for sites, you might develop your local policies and might want to publish those into digital form, like my customer has done here. So this example in the screenshot is New Forest District Council. And I still see too many PDFs today. It's really a push and push by central government, the Department for Levelling Up and Housing and Communities, to digitally show those local policies rather than having the hundreds of PDFs which are difficult to use. Finally, the examples we're going to show you today, looking at the assessing the sustainability of planning applications. So using a complaints query and associated optional report. So we've got a tool called Find It. It can be really useful in pre-planning. For example, property owners can find out any constraints and be informed before they actually submit a planning application. So without further ado, I will pass across to Simon. He's got each of these 5 use cases I've been discussing in a bit more detailed live demos for you. Feel free to start asking questions in the question panel and we will pick them up after. Over to you, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Demelza. So, yep, I'll share my screen and then we'll make a start on my demonstration. Okay, so yeah, as Demelza has described, I'm going to share some use cases based on sort of the 5 subject areas that Demelza has just spoken about. So I'm going to be starting off with sort of planning for recovery and transformation with a focus specifically on economic development. So the use of GIS and web mapping can help you inform future planning activities. And one area of importance is economic development, where you want to create those thriving local economies where people want to live and work and where employers want to invest. Now, as part of that economic strategy, you need to understand your community strengths, whether that be an educated and diverse workforce, maybe you've got great transportation links, perhaps there's sufficient affordable housing in your local authority area, or perhaps your area has a lower cost of living. And that is where GIS and web mapping comes in, because you can use location intelligence to kind of visualize and analyze your community and its growth potential. First of all, we could look at the people in our communities and use demographic information to analyze the makeup of our local area. Now, you might be familiar with mosaic data from Experian or Acorn data from CACI, which provide neighborhood profiling based on several different social factors, population, and consumer behavior. Now, the example I've got in front of you today is actually an open data set, but it works in a very similar way where different areas are classified by the types of people that live there. And you can use the map to color each classification to see that makeup across your local authority area. Now, this type of information can provide, some really valuable insight. For example, one of the mosaic classifications is called city prosperity, and they describe this as high status city dwellers living in central locations who are pursuing careers with high rewards. Now, if there's an abundance of these types of residents, that might be one strength of your community that encourages certain types of business to invest in the local area because of the workforce that might be available. You could also analyze how educated the workforce is. So the census provides some really useful information on the sort of the highest level of qualifications attained. And this visualization shows the percentage of people who have achieved the 5 or more GCSEs as their sort of highest level of qualification. So the darker the green, sort of the higher the percentage. And you might expect some perhaps lower numbers in certain areas because, if we compare that with a different level of educational achievements, this particular visualization shows the percentage of achieved a bachelor's degree or higher. And there are quite a few areas shown in sort of the darker shades of blue where 30 to 40% have this level of attainment. Here is sort of another example, this time just looking at population numbers. Some businesses like retail need to know potential catchment areas, so understanding what that reach might be and where the population is located is important to them. And then just to show you sort of one more example focused on people, I'm going to switch interfaces momentarily where here we're looking at Microsoft Power BI, which is being widely adopted by local authorities for business intelligence and performance reporting. And we have a visual where you can embed a map into this environment. Now, it's still using web mapping, but it just offers another opportunity to convey local information. And there are many benefits to the visual, such as being able to use Ordnance Survey mapping. You can also display and interact with points, lines, and polygons. You can use dynamic colors, which we have in this example. And you can also show sort of additional read-only layers in the map as well, if you wish. But this particular report is focusing on the indices of multiple deprivation, which ranks every LSOA in the country in sequential order from sort of 1 to 32,000 odd, with number 1 being the most deprived LSOA in the country. And then the right hand side of this report, we've got some stats and visuals just telling us how York ranks in terms of IMD. But on the left, we have the embedded CAD Corp map, and I've themed the LSOAs by rank. So if I sort of zoom in and hover over an LSOA, we can see its rank, but also get kind of a picture of how deprived or perhaps affluent certain areas of the local authority is. So the visual here for Power BI just provides sort of another opportunity to share that mapping insight. So returning back to web maps, so yeah, those were sort of a couple of examples of viewing information about people, but it's not just about people when we consider economic development. It's also about place as well, whether that be identifying areas for new business, maybe increasing our housing supply, or maximising our own assets for community gain. Now, what might be useful is to understand sort of the makeup of the local economy and kind of understand where that economy is located. Now, the Ordnance Survey have a land use data theme from the NGD. So as we sort of zoom into the map here, and it provides polygons showing land use. Now, I've just got an extract of that data set. And if you look at the legend on the left-hand side, I've just sort of cherry-picked some specific land use types that might be of most importance, but kind of identify where where that sort of local economy is located. You could potentially use other data sets to look at sort of the concentrations of specific sort of business types or economy. So here I used address base to basically pull out all of the addresses classified as retail. So we can see there are lots of retail units in York, and you can visualize this information in many different ways. So here's just an example where I've used a cluster technique to identify where those kind of retail clusters are across York. Obviously, the city centre is going to be pretty prominent, but it does identify, those clusters around the city centre as well. And then just to show sort of a different visualization approach, here we're looking at industrial type businesses, but kind of using a hotspot analysis here to pick out where the concentrations and kind of understand where these types of businesses are located within the authority area. And it's these types of analysis that can help us shape the planning and redevelopment for the future, because our strategy might be to expand that existing economy. Now that we know where that economy is located, we can then maybe look at land opportunities nearby, which might involve consulting our brownfield register data just to see if there's any opportunities that exist here. I know that many sort of local authorities also have kind of extensive land ownership, and are also perhaps looking for opportunities to kind of sell and develop these assets further. And I'll also touch upon this a bit later, but you might offer those opportunities to landowners to propose sites for future development as well. So I feel I've probably only touched the surface today, and you can probably think of some other sort of use case examples for web mapping and economic development. But yeah, hopefully I've shared some ideas today that you'll find useful. Now, moving on to sort of the second topic of the morning, I'm going to focus on sort of local amenities and the crucial role they play to a community's well-being. Now, web mapping can of course allow you to show and analyze the availability of these amenities in your local area, and it could be as simple as just displaying their locations on the map, and perhaps for context. And this particular overlay I've just switched on shows the kind of the built up area within York. And from this perspective, we might say there appears to be a good sort of distribution, sort of location wise, of sort of doctors' surgeries around York. This next example showing community centres, again, maybe on the face of it, pretty good accessibility, although we have some, certain kind of urban outliers where there isn't a community centre nearby. But yeah, perhaps there are reasons for this. But just beyond these simple points on a map, you can produce and share different types of analysis to delve deeper into the accessibility of local amenities. Now we all know libraries provide such a valuable resource in the community. They offer more than just sort of borrowing books nowadays, because they offer access to additional community services and activities. And this particular example here is showing a 15-minute sort of walking isochrone from every library. And it just gives us that sort of visualization of how accessible our libraries might be based on a 15-minute walking parameter. And this next example, slightly different. It shows accessibility to our libraries from every postcode. But yeah, this time looking at sort of drive time analysis instead. And if I expand the legend on the left-hand side, so this theming basically shows us the sort of the red and kind of orange postcodes have the greatest drive time to their nearest library. Now I'm using the city of York today, and in terms of geographical size, it's not the biggest compared to most local authorities across the country. So yeah, in this example, these red and orange postcodes, they are the furthest away from a library in terms of drive time, but looking at the times, they really aren't that far. But for those of you who work in maybe larger rural areas, you can imagine that range of drive time accessibility can be quite significant. And in fact, this type of analysis has been used to help decide where kind of mobile libraries should visit. So being able to sort of target those communities who don't have a nearby library, but ensuring they've got access to a library in a different form. And I've used sort of libraries in this sort of use case example this morning, but you can repeat that analysis for other types of amenities, whether it's community centres, youth clubs, maybe play areas. And if it helps spot those gaps in the community where accessibility isn't great, it can help steer that investment or funding opportunities in the areas of the community that would benefit the most. So those types of examples would definitely benefit those who are, assessing and planning for new amenity locations. But how do our customers know where these amenities are to them? Now they could, again, just turn data layers on the map and look at the dots on the map to do that, or they could use local knowledge. Now local knowledge can tell our customers where the nearest amenities are based on a location. So, for example, I might be a member of the community, I've accessed a map, I could use pan and zoom or use a search at the top here to find my location, maybe my home address, for example. I'm going to use a postcode search in this example today. So I'm going to search for my postcode, select the result, so it takes us to that location on the map. And then in the top left-hand corner, I'm going to run local knowledge. Now, local knowledge in this example has been designed to tell me where my nearby amenities are. So, for example, it starts off by sharing some of our nearby community services. So, can you tell me where my nearest community centre is? So, the first result tells us it's the Barnabas Centre, 69 meters away. And if I hit this icon here on the map, it gives us a bit of location there on the map. This local knowledge is also telling us about other community services nearby. Where's our nearest church or village hall? Maybe post office services. It's also including sort of healthcare facilities. So yeah, where's the nearest GP, dentist, and pharmacy locations? As we scroll down further, yep, where's my sort of nearest educational establishment? So yep, that's where my nearest primary school is located and secondary school. As I scroll through further, we've got leisure facilities. And then just in a sort of a slightly sort of different example, we've got my nearest library, but it's displayed slightly differently to the sort of the previous examples where I've got a pre-calculated sort of travel time and also contact details for the nearby library as well. And then the last sort of example here is, where is our access to the nearest train station? Now, these are my examples I've chosen today, but this service can be configured to your liking. But you can probably all agree, local knowledge is it's a simple but quick way to access information. And as a member of the community, it's concise information at your fingertips. It's all in a single place, but it's also tailored to the chosen location, wherever that might be in the local area. So yeah, those are a couple of examples of how web mapping can be used to share and analyze sort of accessibility to local amenities. Now, for the remainder of my demonstration, I'm actually going to focus on some use case examples focused on forward planning. And I'm going to start off with sort of topic 3 and sort of the mechanism for receiving calls for site submissions from landowners. So as some of you might be aware, when it comes to sort of the preparation of planning policy, local authorities will provide an opportunity for landowners to submit sites for development so they can be potentially included as allocations in planning policy. And as Demelza described earlier, we are currently developing a specific web mapping add-in to facilitate that workflow. Now, it is currently in the development lifecycle, but I do have kind of a proof of concept that I can at least kind of show you the principle of what it will do. But bear in mind, sort of the dialogues will change, and there will be some other options added to what I can show you today. So let me show you an example of how maybe a call for site submission will work with web mapping. And for this workflow, we're going to actually draw the site on the map. So I need to navigate to the site I want to submit. So I'm going to use the search again at the top to find that location. So again, I'm going to do a postcode search. Excuse me. And then we'll navigate to that location. And it's this site here that I want to submit. So let's start the submission. So from the main menu, we're going to access our call for sites. And from the drop down, we're going to draw our site on the map. Now, there will be other options available, including the ability to kind of upload a GIS file with the site boundary. So on this example today, I'm going to draw my site on the map. So we'll just draw around the site like so, and then complete the site. And then once we're happy, we're going to click next. So the next part of the submission is a form. Now this form will be separated into separate sections in the final app, but for today, I've just got it all in one form today. Now this form, you can utilize mandatory fields and drop-down lists with predefined values, so you can control that form submission. There will also be opportunities to upload documentation for specific responses as well. And the example I've got today, I've actually just sort of copied the example from a local authority website. So in their particular form, of course, they're going to ask for some contact details from the person submitting the site. I won't fill in all these details today, but yeah, including your company name, their address, and other contact information. And then further down on the form, we then get into that more site-specific information. So, what is my interest in the site? So here, using a drop down to say, "Yep, I'm the owner of this site." Could add in the address of the site. What is it currently being used for? Let's say it's being used for agricultural at the moment. The condition of the site, yep, is good. What do I want to propose the site for? So in this example, I want to propose it for additional housing. I believe I can deliver that within sort of 1 to 5 years. Have we sought any sort of planning on the site before? No, I haven't. I'm going to include a date of my submission, and then there's an option to add some additional comments as part of the submission there at the bottom. But once I've sort of completed that first part of the form, in this example, the last item to add is a contact email address, a little security check, and then we can hit send. So that site has now been submitted to the local authority. The site and the information is stored into a database, which can then be kind of accessed and used for the next stage of the process. And there will also be sort of email notifications to confirm that submission, which will be sent to both the local authority and the user who submitted the site. So it's going to be a really simple process and interface that can facilitate that call for site submission. And there'll certainly be more information coming soon when that application is available. And if you are interested in finding out more, please make a comment in the exit survey at the end of this webinar, and we'll be in touch further. Okay, so in addition to supporting your call for sites process, once you're at the end of that local plan process, you've got through the examinations and you've reached that adoption stage, web mapping can also assist in the publication of the local plan. Now, many moons ago, I used to work in planning policy, and I had sort of the arduous task of preparing over 100 separate PDF maps for the proposals map. That was because the authority that I used to work for was very rural, so there were sort of separate PDF maps for all of the villages in the area. Nowadays, web mapping can be used to publish that same information, but in a more friendly interface. So for sort of topic 4, we're going to sort of move away from York for a moment, and we're traveling sort of further north to Redcar and Cleveland, where I've actually got an example of their local plan policies. And I've even branded the map in the top left-hand corner as my sort of local plan proposals map. Now, if I access the quick access drawer on the right, and just use this option here to toggle on all of the overlays so we can see all the policies, you could start the map with all the policies visible if you wanted to. But this particular map kind of reminds me of the headaches that I used to have, because there could be so many policies to display, and they all need to have their own type of styling to kind of make them unique from each other. Hence, you often get sort of an output that looks very busy. But let's just turn all off, and I'm going to specifically turn on my group of economic development policies, and we can see sort of the styling there on the right hand side. And if we kind of start to zoom into the map to maybe see these policies in a bit more detail, I could click on this particular policy, and then on the left hand side we can see the policy information. You could even have hyperlinks in here, which might link to a specific page on your website, or even perhaps the actual PDF document for the local plan where you can maybe access further information about that particular policy. Or just to show you sort of a slightly different approach, or something I've already shown you, if I run local knowledge in this particular map, I've actually tailored it differently to the sort of the previous example. Now, local knowledge here is searching against the policies and then providing me a list of the policies it's found at the center of the map. Now, this could be useful for potential developers to screen their development sites and find out what policies they might have to consider or address if they're going to submit a planning application. So yeah, it's just another example showing the versatility of web mapping, this time sharing that local plan policy information. Right, so just to finish off my demonstration today, topic 5, we're going to look at assessing the sustainability of planning applications. Now, all planning submissions are assessed to find out if there are any significant constraints that will determine if planning permission will be granted. So to help with that assessment, Find It for Web Map can help you take a site boundary and then find all the constraints that might be present. Now, it means you don't have to perhaps look at a map, turn all of the constraints layers on, and just sort of perform a visual check. Find It can automate that process for you. So let me show you an example. So I'm going to turn on an overlay which shows the site that I want to search with, and I'm going to zoom to it on the map. And then in the main menu, in the top left-hand corner, we're going to access Find It. Now, Find It provides several options for defining the site that you want to search with, including, an option to draw a site on the map. But for today, we've already got a boundary captured, so I'm going to use the selecting a feature option, and then I'm going to click on the boundary on the map to select it. So I've got a bit trigger happy there, so just bear with me a second. So we're going to select the feature and then click on the site there. So we can now see it's red and highlighted on the map. Now, there are also additional buffer options if you want to extend that search area. So, perhaps you want to search for constraints that are also within a 50-meter sort of radius of that site boundary. So you can include that as part of your search. But I'm just going to run with the site boundary as it is. Now, Find It will now analyze the site boundary against all the sort of planning constraints I've defined, and then it will tell me alongside the map which constraints it's found within that site. So, for example, on the left-hand side, the first constraint it's found is related to flooding. So this site intersects one of the Environment Agency's flood zone data sets. You can continue to scroll through the results on the left-hand side, or you can create a formatted PDF document which will document the search and all of the results that it's found. And this is sort of an example of the output. So on the first page, it will provide sort of the search date and time of the search that we've just carried out. And every search is also given a unique ID. And then underneath, we'll have sort of an embedded map here showing the area that we've searched with. And then on the following pages, you'll then see the constraints information. So for each constraint, you can have kind of an embedded map, which shows the site boundary and also the constraint information. So in this example, we can see actually only a small part of the site boundary intersects the flood mapping data. So the map here is just giving us some additional context to the results. If we start to scroll down the document, so other sustainability factors it's considered is, we've searched sort of listed buildings. Data, so it's found 2 within the site, and we've got information there about those particular 2 listed buildings underneath. It's also found 14 TPOs within that site extent, and then underneath, we've got the records for each of those TPOs. And then if I just perhaps scroll down a bit further to maybe one more example, it's also compared the site against the conservation area data. So yeah, we can see, yep, this intersects a conservation area. So yeah, there might be some additional sort of planning considerations that apply for this particular site. It's also worth mentioning each site and the results are also stored to a database for audit purposes. So if find it here can help you speed up that site assessment work by quickly taking your site of interest, compare it against whatever constraints you want to throw at it, and then it'll give you a list of sort of results and considerations to assist with the next step of the planning process. And that brings into my demonstration this morning. So yeah, I've shared a lot of use case examples based on those 5 sort of subject areas. So yeah, looking at economic development, we looked at access to amenities, call for site submissions, using web mapping to share your local plan mapping, and then finish off by using Find It to assess the sort of suitability of planning applications. So yeah, thank you for watching my demonstration this morning. I'll now pass you back to Demelza for the remainder of this webinar. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Simon. Thank you for taking us in depth through all of those different examples. Just a reminder that you can ask questions. Still, we've got a couple of questions, but if you do, we'll pick up those just in a second. I am just going to round up before I do look at the questions. So just in terms of key takeaways, we've come a long way in the last 30 years. CACOP web map is next generation web mapping. It's really very flexible, and we've shown examples of today where web mapping can inform future planning activities and highlight opportunities for economic, social, and environmental growth. We're aware you typically have less GIS resources available within local government, but CACOP can assist you in delivering planning related, hosted and managed software and data services and consultancy services as well. You've not really seen consultancy services, but we do provide analysis, modelling and 3D type capabilities. So we've given you a bit of a taster also of a new product today that will be available over the coming months. If you want any more information on call for sites or anything else that you've seen today and you've not asked a question on it, just feel free to pop that into the exit survey and one of my colleagues will be in touch. Also, if you would like a specific demo for your organisation or discuss a particular business area, we can arrange this too. Again, just let us know when you exit today. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. I'll turn my camera on and start to pick up those. I think the first one I've got for you, Simon, from Misha. Right at the beginning of your demos, as well as the sort of Mosaic and Acorn data, you showed an open demographic data set. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, just can. Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I didn't really sort of mention it earlier during my demonstration, but yeah, that particular data set comes from the Consumer Data Research Centre, and they provide sort of a variety of sort of population-based data sets. They actually include data packs that you can download by local authority areas, so they're definitely sort of worth checking out. And yeah, the data I showed you today was their output area classification data sets. And actually, I could perhaps maybe drop a link in the chat so you can see where that data set has come from.
Thank you very much, Simon. I've got one from Jim here. I understand I don't need to be a GIS expert to use the system, but do I need knowledge to be able to administer the system? So the answer to that is not necessarily. We can be flexible. CACOP can provide fully administered, sort of managed services if needed. We've got customers who do both, customers who might have the experience in-house, and we can provide training to enable customers to administer their own websites, but also we fully manage websites on our customers' behalf as well. Okay, one further question from Rachel, specifically about call for sites, but I'll answer the question with regards to add-ins in general. So CACOP provides core software, which is WebMap, as you've seen today, and we provide a number of different add-ins with additional functionality within those, whether it's local knowledge, find it, call for sites. Those add-ins are at an additional cost because they provide different functionality for different organisations, and not everyone would require that functionality. Okay, if we haven't picked up your question, we will do so afterwards. We're at 3/4 of an hour now, so we'll stop there. Again, feel free to ask any questions as the exit survey pops up at the end. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great day. We look forward to seeing you in the future.